Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the It Works For Me podcast. This is the podcast where I, your host, Justin Kelly, share habits, practices, and insights that have helped me live a happier, more successful life. I'm Justin Kelly, and again, we'll explore today some books that have significantly influenced my personal growth, creativity, and happiness. I'm going to talk about some motivational books, inspirational, motivational, all of that, some fiction, and also just kind of discuss between both versions, motivational, inspirational, historical, like that kind of stuff, and why I choose to read and listen to those via audiobook, and the same for the fiction books as well. So the very first one that I'm going to be talking about or the very first group of books are kind of the motivational, inspirational, and educational books. The first one that I always start off with whenever I'm working with somebody or talking to somebody and we're talking about career growth, career development, leadership growth, and leadership development, I always go back to Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Extreme Ownership taught me the importance of accountability. Some of the highlights from that book that really stuck with me was own everything in your world. And then another thing that really resonated with me that I'll never get over, and it's kind of hard to deal with, is there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. This helped me kind of develop and transform my leadership style at work and just in life by taking full responsibility for outcomes, both successes and failures. So regardless, if I do well, it's because I had a good team that allowed me to do well, and I own that success. But ultimately, my team that I was leading is what led us to that success. But I still own the success. And then the same with failures. It wasn't my team's fault that we didn't meet a certain key performance indicator or a key or any kind of metrics are not meeting the goal that we have set for ourselves. It's because I didn't prepare them well enough to meet those goals, or I didn't support them in their day-to-day work to achieve the goals that we set. So again, it's taking that extreme ownership of everything that happens when it comes to your leadership. So the reason I really love that book is not only do they tell extremely exciting stories of, military operations where they're behind enemy lines and they're fighting for their life, and they're in that position because maybe one of the authors, or they're telling a story that somebody else told them, that kind of thing. I'm trying to remember specifically. I think it's two different authors. There's Jocko and another gentleman, but they tell these stories from being in these military engagements, and they made a mistake and they're putting their whole team at risk, and it's a life or death situation. So it's exciting. You get and listening to it as an audiobook, it's exciting because they're adding in sound effects, or they're adding in music, or whatever it is to kind of draw you in. And then they take that same story and that same mistake or that same success that they had, and they relate it to a story of when they did leadership counseling or guidance consulting. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word, but they're also leadership consultants. So then they would take that same story from the military world and then marry that to a story in their consulting world, and you get kind of like both sides of how the exact same mistake or success or idea or whatever can work in the real world as well as in these military situations. So that one is extremely exciting. It keeps you engaged, and then it also really breaks it down for you as like a leader in a more corporate setting or a healthcare organization setting, just any setting that you're a leader of people. So that's one of the ones that I really enjoy, and I fully always recommend anybody that's in a leadership position to read that. I've actually bought it for some of the people that report to me that were working their way into leadership positions. Another book that seems a little hokey when you first read it or listen to it via audiobook is The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. This book focuses on the power of waking up early to increase productivity and enhance your personal development. So the way I look at this book is it kind of the way it is written and the way it reads is it's a person telling a story of meeting this guru, and this guru is very odd and very strange, but everything that he does throughout this book is tied to this whole idea of waking up early and taking personal accountability, increasing your productivity, enhancing your development. And it may seem weird to the outside world that you are, stopping mid conversation with somebody to bang out 10 or 15, 20 push-ups. It's odd, and I don't see a lot of people doing these kinds of things, but just at the very base of it, getting up at 5 a.m. alone. And some people listening to this, maybe you work a job where you're up much, much earlier than 5 a.m. or you have kids or something like that keeps you up at night, or whatever it is. I don't get up at 5 a.m. every single day, but I do try to follow the idea of this story of 5 a.m. I get up, I spend the first hour of my day doing exercise, thinking through the plan for my day, and then either journaling or reading or something. And it's called the 20-20-20 formula. So you spend 20 minutes exercising, 20 minutes planning your day, 20 minutes on learning or educational or inspirational material. I've incorporated a lot of the things from this book into my personal life, and it's improved my mental clarity, and it sets an extremely positive tone for my days. I know when I don't get up and I don't get to the gym before work, and I have to figure out how I'm going to squeeze it into my day. My day just runs a little tougher. I'm a little bit more anxious because I have other responsibilities that might be taking over my time that I would be spending at the gym. And for me personally, I've talked about this with Colin Taylor. The morning is the best time because everybody's still asleep in my family and in my home. When I try to fit it in throughout the day, maybe I'm going at lunch. Well, then I missed out on being able to be really focused on my protein and my macros for my diet, because I'm like so focused on getting to the gym. So then I kind of maybe slack off on how well I'm keeping track of what I'm eating. Then if I try to go in the evening, then I'm missing out on family time and having dinner with my family. So again, the waking up early in the morning and getting that stuff done in the morning, it just sets a tone for my day that everything is going to go the way I would like it to go. So that's again the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. And then I wanted to move to the next kind of book that I think I always recommend to people. We actually in my organization just spent this past year going over this text and doing classes about it and exploring our own ways to where we can improve ourselves. But it's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. In this book, it seems very, and like when I actually listened to this as an audiobook before we read this at work as well. It seemed very, very common sense to me when I was listening to it, because a lot of the things that he was sharing are things that I kind of already do. But he breaks down in this book how small, consistent changes can lead to major improvements over time. So it's kind of that whole idea of 1% better every day. So if you do that over an extended period of time, you'll have some compounding interest and you'll eventually be a lot better than you were just a few months ago. But highlights of this book are, like I just said, habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. So building these healthy habits and also destroying or getting rid of your negative habits, because there are tons of habits that we have that we need to stop. So that was also very like kind of eye-opening, is like kind of taking an account of what habits do I have that are negative and what do I have that are positive? How can we continue those positive ones, and how can we kind of reduce or eliminate those negative ones completely? And then he also kind of talks about practical methods like habit stacking and environmental cues. So habit stacking is like, let me think about that for just a second. Okay, so habit stacking is kind of like, for example, for me, I go to the gym first thing in the morning. That's kind of my normal routine. Adding the habit of always making sure I get at least my first bit of protein in the morning before I head to the gym. That's something that I do forget quite often. So building in that habit of making that drink when I'm also making my pre-workout or taking my vitamins, like doing that all before I go to the gym, because I know if I try to do it after when I get home, it's not as easy to do because my kids are up, we're getting them ready for daycare, and I'm trying to figure out, like, I'm trying to rush around and get like my shower done, get cleaned up, get ready for the day. So building those habits on top of each other will help you to stack those and have a better outcome. Building these habits around my fitness, just again, fitness and reading and all of these things they transformed my daily routine and completely overhauled my health and fitness. Because again, I started this whole kind of journey with fitness just, I think it's 3 years ago now. It might be closer to four. It's coming. I think it's coming up on 4 years. But the reason that I did that was solely just to try to feel more confident and look better. And then it started to kind of like leak into other parts of my life and kind of take over and help me, just get better as a human. And so like, not only am I doing the fitness stuff, now I'm like, I need to figure out my mental status. I need to figure out. So I started journaling. So these are just like all kinds of things that, if you focus on one thing and you try to get better, a lot of times it'll bleed into other things. And to quote a coach that I had in high school football is, I want to say winning breed, like it was kind of something like, winning breeds more winning, or champions breed more champions, something like that. Because the way that what he was getting at was, we started to become a very successful football team. And prior to my freshman year, our team had always been pretty good, but they had never been extremely successful, I think, since like the 80s. And so we started having a good team, and then that kind of it seemed to have bled into and transferred to the other sports within our same school. So not only were we doing well in football, then we started doing better in basketball, then we started doing better in the women's sports, and then we started doing better in golf and track and all these other things, because success breeds success. That's what it was, I think. But another way to look at it is success encourages more success, because people will get competitive. They want to be good too. They see they see the success that the football teams have, and they want to have that same success. So again, I think that's very similar to what just kind of happened naturally with me by kind of choosing fitness as the thing that I wanted to improve. And then that started kind of going into the other things like my mental health, and then eventually kind of leading me to wanting to start this podcast of things that work for me. So lastly, the last book is more kind of on a financial side. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This was a critical book on financial literacy that it kind of reshaped how I think about and understand money. Again, I cannot give anybody any advice or tips or thoughts on money, because I'm probably one of the last people you should listen to, because I like to spend money. But this book kind of really opened my eyes on, assets versus a liability, and how you can kind of build passive income. So and the power of that is amazing. Your money's making money for you while you're not even doing any work. And then another quote that stuck out to me was, the rich don't work for money. They have money work for them. And again, it's figuring out how you can reduce your liabilities and build assets. So I really, really enjoyed that book. It kind of got me just started thinking in that direction. It was more recent. And again, I don't have any expertise or knowledge in that area, but it motivated me and inspired me to be better with my money, and to start thinking about how I could possibly increase my wealth and hopefully create some sort of wealth for my family for when I'm gone. But it changed my mindset towards investing and financial planning. I'd always had my buddy Rob, who's a fantastic financial planner. I don't know if he's called a financial planner or not. Sorry, Rob. You might be like an investment. I don't know what your official title is, but you work with money and you help me make more money. So I appreciate that. But having a proactive approach as opposed to reactive. So not just being like, oh, well, I just spent a bunch of money, now I don't have any money. You're trying to plan how you're going to save for your retirement, how you're going to create some wealth for you and your family. So those books: Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma, Atomic Habits by James Clear, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Those are the kind of, I would say, life-changing or life-altering. That's 4 titles, but I've probably consumed 3 to 4 times that many over the years. But, and again, a lot of this started kind of early on in 2020, 2021, something like that, because that was something that I was really focused on improving myself around that time. I was also was I had just started back in college, and I just really wanted to really dive headfirst into leadership and growth and development. So that's how those books kind of came about. I have plenty of other titles, and also I would be more than happy and I would be ecstatic if those of you listening would share with me some of the books that maybe have changed your life or led you to think differently. So let's jump into the more fun side of fiction and entertainment that I think stimulates your creativity, joy, lets you relax, or lets you unwind, and just enjoy in general. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. This is a book that I read probably back when I was in college, the first time, probably 2008, sometime around there, 2006, something like that. But Hunter S. Thompson is what they called gonzo journalism. So he would do these big pieces on, for example, Vegas, but it was told through his own viewpoint. It would combine intense imagery with humor. He would talk about what was really going on during the time frame, but at the same time, it would be there would be humor. There would be, just a lot of just strange things that I think only could come from his mind. But Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas had a cultural impact, and it explored America and the American dream through just a very, very odd lens. And I can't say how much that book made an impact on me and how much it made me want to be a writer. It made me want to do what he was doing. But I know that that's not possible because I didn't have that skill. I didn't have that natural ability. But again, reading fiction like that to me enhanced creativity. It allowed me to unwind and kind of simulate my imagination on what I could do. So when it comes to podcasts, when it comes to journaling, writing, I even checked off something on my bucket list of doing stand-up comedy, like things like that. Reading that book kind of like, I think, combining everything together and taking everything into account probably is what this was kind of one of the starts to that was that book. Stephen King. That's another that's I'm not going to go super deep into all of the fictional books because I'm a sucker for a series. I'm not going to lie. I've read the Harry Potter series. I've read the Twilight series. I've read the Divergent series. I've read the Hunger Games series, like young adult fiction series. I'm all in. I'm a sucker for it. It's like junk food. It's just easy to listen to. It's easy to read, and it's exciting and fun. But Stephen King, man, he is just a masterful storyteller, and the character development, it profoundly impacts me on a regular basis when I'm listening to, rereading, or re-listening to a story by him. One of the things that always sticks out with me is how, regardless of how pure and awesome the hero or the protagonist in his writing is, there's typically a dark side to them. And the dark side the way I looked at it is if you kind of think about it, there is darkness and there is flaws within everybody. And the way that he develops those characters, it makes me feel like I'm watching a movie in my head when I'm either listening to the audiobook or reading the book. I feel like I can really, really immerse myself into it. And just his ability to blend the human emotions with supernatural or like intense, scary moments and scenes. Like it just somebody else, a teacher or somebody that I spoke to a long time ago said it's so intense and it feels so real. It makes you wonder, like, how does Stephen King think about these things? Like, how does he come up with them? It almost feels like the only way it could be as good as it is if he actually performed some of these like horrific, like scary scenes and scenarios. But I know that's probably not true, obviously. But at the same time, I get where they were going with it. It's so intense and so feels so real when you're reading it that, you know, it makes you wonder where he came up with that. Books like The Shining and It, I think those are great at showing Stephen King's his unique storytelling. These books provided a mental escape, and they again also boosted my creative thinking, and I think some emotional depth has come from those books that I don't think I would have had without reading. I've read pretty much his entire library. if there is some that I haven't read, I would be surprised if I came across them or listened to via audiobook. It also has a very funny anecdotal story. I was reading that book when I was probably in eighth grade, seventh or eighth grade. It might have been sixth or seventh grade, but either way, I was reading it. And in the house I was growing up in with my mom and my stepfather, the garage door was really loud. So you like always knew when people had gotten home. You kind of knew, and you could kind of just be ready to say hello or whatever. It was very easy to kind of like hear that and know what was going on. And I was so engrossed in the book and I was so just like deep concentration reading it, and it was in a very scary part of the book. And my mom had gotten home and I had not heard the garage door, and she pops her head in my room and says, "Hello, Justin," or like just kind of something, "Hey, Justin," or hey, buddy. And at the time I had a bunk bed, and I threw the book up in the air and like kind of like yelled and almost fell out of the top bunk. It was that intense, and that scared the ever living Jesus out of me. It was crazy, but I will just never forget that story of just thinking about how terrified I was when she just popped her head in and said hello. So why reading matters to me. I think regular reading, it can significantly enhance your vocabulary. It can help with critical thinking, creativity, and just stimulating you mentally. My reading routine, the way it works for me, again, call back to the title of the podcast. I typically in the morning will have something motivational, inspirational, or educational via audiobook on my way to work or wherever I'm traveling to that day. And that to me primes my mindset, gets me ready to attack my day, motivates me to attack my day, has me already thinking creatively right away. Evenings, it's on the way home from work or on the way home from wherever I'm at, whatever it is. I try to do fiction and I've also always been a huge podcast fan. I know this is more podcast is based on this podcast is based on books and things like that. But I'll listen to something funny, something entertaining, something intense, but it's fiction to relax and kind of let me unwind and also think about the creative things that I like to take part in. So, and also just to kind of like give me some escape. I like to listen to stuff that I like sci-fi, I like fantasy, I like interesting crazy stories. Like the one I'm listening to currently is "Oh, You Like It Darker" by Stephen King, and it's just a collection of stories, and those just, it's great. I like his short stories a lot. To me, this reinforces positive mental habits in the morning and then reduces stress in the evening. I think if you could link back to previous podcast topics, episode on hobbies, reading's a meaningful hobby. A lot of people pick up reading as a hobby. Episode on punctuality, reading consistently can build your discipline and your routine. And episode on friendships. So my mom and I definitely regularly talk about the books that we're either reading or listening to via audiobook. And I think it really does enhance our connection and our friendship and just our relationship in general. And we're able to talk about those. And same with my wife and same with other book nerds that I like to be friends with. I like talking through things that we've shared the same experience, or get their recommendations on something that they think I would like. And I try to always share my recommendations, but not everybody likes what I like. These are the books that I've read, and that's, again, this is what works for me. Hopefully it works for you, but hopefully you share with me what works for you as well. And then finally, just, final reflections and recommendations. I encourage you to diversify your reading to fully benefit from various genres. I try to do that myself. I also think that you should, for me, audiobooks work the best because I'm in my truck and my car a lot, traveling for work. Also, I love listening to audiobooks when I'm like, it's almost all travel. Very rarely. Oh, also when I'm mowing, or if I'm working outside in the yard or something like that, doing any kind of chores, that's another time that I read. And then I've actually just literally just the other night, I've decided that I'm going to do 30 minutes of reading before bed. And the book I'm reading currently is Behold a Pale Horse. It's written by a gentleman that I think is going to walk me through a bunch of conspiracies. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I also invite you guys to share influential books and reading habits to me via the podcast. I think you can comment on the podcast on Spotify, leave comments on social media, email me at jdkelly@gmail.com. You can comment on the Instagram. It's Juice85OR7. I think Facebook, I'm just Justin Kelly. So just reach out in any way, shape, or form, and tell me about your books and things that have really influenced your life, and maybe any ideas or tips or suggestions on how to incorporate more reading in life. And again, I always will thank you for your engagement and support. Next episode, actually, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do and talk about on the next episode, but I just want to make sure that to remind you guys to subscribe, rate this podcast when you're listening to it on, whatever you're listening to, share it. And just remember, find what works for you and keep at it. But until next time, take care. This is what works for me.